So again, we're formally going to start today's webinar and presentation. And I just want to introduce myself. I'm John Floyd. I work with Efficiency Vermont and wanted to thank all of you for joining us and welcome you to today's webinar. So in brief, in lieu of this year's in-person best practices exchange, Efficiency Vermont is pleased to present a three-part webinar series to highlight critical energy efficiency technologies for businesses. The series will include expert guidance on lighting, variable frequency drives, and HVAC controls, with sessions presented every 3 weeks starting today. Today's topic is improving lighting through lighting retrofit projects, and will be presented by Adam Tower and Jill O'Connor of Efficiency Vermont, with a very special guest as well to join us. If you have questions again during the presentation, use either the chat or Q&A tool, and Adam, Jill, or I'll be glad to answer them. And also just one quick note, the session will be recorded and we will post this to efficiencyvermont.com. So if you want to view it later, excellent. Or if you want to share it with others, do so as well. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Adam to do a quick intro to the topic, and then away we go.
Thank you, John, and thanks everybody for being here. My name is Adam Tower, and I'm an energy consultant with Efficiency Vermont. I'm happy to be here today, and actually John sent over the list of folks that are attending today's presentation, and I was really excited to see the group of folks that are attending. It's really great content that we're going to be sharing with you, and excited to have you all here. So as I said, my name is Adam Tower, and I'm an energy consultant with Efficiency Vermont. And today I'm going to be playing in the background here, just moving along the presentation, and Jill will be presenting the bulk of information. Jill is an energy consultant with Efficiency Vermont as well, and we focus primarily on lighting projects and for commercial and industrial customers. And we also have, as John mentioned, a special guest, Patrick Giordano with Gifford Medical Center, the Director of Facilities at Gifford. And he's going to be sharing some of his work there at Gifford Medical Center and his work with us here at Efficiency Vermont. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jill.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We hope that you will enjoy this lighting presentation. It does say it's lighting through retrofit projects, but we're really going to focus on the control aspect for the lighting. We know a lot of you are interested in upgrading to LEDs or have in fact already upgraded to LEDs. So we want to kind of expand your knowledge about controls and where that whole segment is going. We can switch slides, Adam. So a real quick covering of the agenda is why to install controls, give a quick overview of some of the different control systems out there, what we look for in control opportunities and the EVT programs that are available to all of you, the information that EVT staff would need, as well as your customers and all you contractors for helping choose which program you would like to go with or which types of controls you would like to go with. And then we're going to talk with Patrick about Gifford Medical Center as our case study that we did a great upgrading of lighting and controls there a few years ago. So moving into the next slide, why controls? As I said, LEDs are becoming more and more common. The savings going from T12s, T8s down to LEDs are pretty much coming to the highest point that we're going to see. In this chart here, you can see that in 2011, we're starting to see indoor LED products start to kind of peak and start on the downslope of where we'll be able to start claiming savings, just because so many places have started to upgrade lighting. Outdoor lighting has already hit that point and is starting on the downward trend. We'll be starting to see, and we are starting to see now, places that are looking at, generation 1 LEDs are starting to look at upgrading those in some cases. So where the savings are going to start really coming from is controlling your lights. And this is going to be really important coming to the future. Patrick will be able to share some great examples of what they've been doing and how you can keep saving going beyond just putting in the basic controls. With these systems, you can monitor daylighting, high-end trim, you can set zoning. There's so much more that you can do now with LED and controls than in previous examples. On the next slide.
And just before we move on to the next slide, I will just interject the date reference, and that's circled here is 2021. That I just wanted to highlight there. I think 2011 is what was mentioned, so I just wanted to make sure that it's 2021 is what is the date that we were referring to there. So just because I know that the slide isn't, you can't necessarily zoom in as closely, so just wanted to make sure I clarified that before we moved on to the next slide.
Sorry about that. I'm obviously backdating myself here. Another thing that you'll be doing a lot in the next few years is integrating all the systems together in the building. So there's one large main dashboard system, and you can just sit in your office and you'll be able to look at how your lighting is performing, how your HVAC is performing, how your security system is performing. And you'll be able to tie a lot of these in together. So the lighting may sense that, okay, it's after hours, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, there should be no activity in the building, and you've got a light on in this area. It can alert your security department. You can tie it in with your HVAC, and if there's a conference room and it hasn't been used all day, it can shut down that VAV box and save you heat. Instead of having to heat that, you can have it set to a setback point, so it's not getting heating as much. And this is all going to be tied together and just help increase the energy savings for all of your buildings. So one of the things you want to think about is future-proofing when you are doing these next lighting upgrades. As you can see on the next slide, another great advantage is the fact that with integrated sensors or even some fixture-mounted controls, with LEDs, they can all run on their own. So you can have them respond at different light levels. You can have them respond as you go down an aisle. In this example here, we have a warehouse and the lights are set at, I believe, 50% light output. Whoop. And as an employee, or in this case, and as an EVT staff member, goes down the aisle, you can watch the lights come up in brightness. So they come up to 100% light output. So even in this instance, you're going to see savings because your lights are, at least 50% off at a lower light level. There's an automatic 50% savings right there for your LED lights. Now you've got them coming up as you need it going down the aisle. So if you're only going in 20 feet in a 100-foot aisle, the rest of the lights can stay at the dim level. There isn't a disadvantage that it is an upfront cost when you're installing some of these, but in the long run, you will see the savings back from it. So now what does EVT, or what are some of the different control systems that we have and what do they look like? First, the basic traditional controls. I think we've all seen these, the wall mounted on-off switches, dual sensors that do some daylighting and some occupancy sensors, motion sensors that only come on when you actually, sense motion in the room, or a vacancy sensor where you actually physically have to touch it, turn the lights on, but it will automatically shut off when you leave. These often control multiple fixtures in that room. Some of the disadvantages to these is it's typically very limited. Sometimes you need to buy 2 sensors, one for daylighting, one for occupancy. Sometimes there's systems that don't work well and play well together. They're typically only limited to that room. And obviously, if you're looking for data, if you're a data geek, a lot of times they don't supply the data. When you move up and look at network lighting control systems, you can start to get more data, more control, more setting points on these. For Efficiency Vermont, we kind of break them out into 2 categories. They're all considered network lighting controls. We just kind of look at them as an integrated lighting control, or as we'll often refer to them as a simplified control system. And that one kind of does the real basics, occupancy, daylighting, some high-end trim. You can often zone them together in a single room. And they still work great. They still are going to give you a lot of savings. Then we have the advanced lighting control system, or as well sometimes refer to it as a comprehensive system, because it does provide a little more granularity on these. An example dashboard here, it will be set up on your computer system, so you can sit and you can look at how your lighting is performing over the season. A lot of times these will have additional functions besides the reporting capabilities. You can do some emergency lighting testing. So it'll bring all the, you hit the emergency lighting button, it'll bring it right up to high level output. We'll go into details a little bit more on the next slide with the different systems. We're going to cover the integrated system first though. These are factory installed in the fixtures, or they may come as a separate part, but it is all designed together to work in the fixture. So it's often built right in, or there may be a space on the fixture that you need to pop the little sensor in. They often come with a cell phone app that you can download, and that's how you're going to commission your lights. It's once you get the hang of it, obviously there's going to be a learning curve like anything, but it's typically fairly easy to use. Everything's, again, right on your phone. So if you need to make adjustments, you just walk back into that area, adjust the light level up, light level down. Maybe you need to adjust timeouts for how often people are in and out. There's no additional wiring into the walls, the ceilings, anything like that, which is fantastic. Again, they can offer more granular coverage. So you can have, if you have one spot where you need daylighting and you need occupancy sensor, but only 3 of the lights out of the half dozen in the room or dozen in the room will get the actual daylight, you can put the same product in and just program it. And then even if there's any residual daylightings floating across the room, it'll pick it up on the other fixtures. These are working well with energy codes, and that's going to be another big thing that we're going to want to think about with how the energy codes are going. So you can get higher energy savings. Again, you can still do high-end trim. You can do your daylighting, your occupancy sensors, all this other real easy ways to adjust things. And it is a single product warranty. So there's no more having to remember, I have light fixture ABC and sensor XYZ. Who do I go to if there's an issue? With your advanced lighting controls or the comprehensive system, you can go a little more above that. There's also scheduling that you can do right on your dashboard. So you can set your basic run hours of 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. And then if anybody is in the building, it'll automatically, you can have it override if they sense motion, and it'll just pick that right up. If you're looking at doing flexible load management and demand response, so you have a high peak event that you're getting notified about, you can log in and have the system set up so that it always dims the lights down to 50 or 25% as soon as you hit that button. Very quick and easy response. Again, I noted that it does energy monitoring, so you can see exactly how much energy you've used over this year, over last year. If you're noticing seasonal, you can record all this. There's a lot of times remote diagnostics. So if a sensor is sensing that something is not responding, it will show you on the dashboard, and you can go quickly and fix that issue before it becomes a real problem. You can see the flexible load management can be tied in. This may include a mixture of integrated sensors and some standalone sensors that can be programmed back into a dashboard. These systems should be commissioned by a very knowledgeable representative for your ideal energy savings. And we're going to talk a lot about what you should be looking for and talking with your contractors and your staff of what you need to make these optimum. They are more complex to install, and they often have a higher cost, but the energy savings and the non-energy benefits that your staff will see and you will see can be a big player in these. And a lot of times you can see up to 45 cents just with the controls with correct commissioning. So you can see a great savings on these. So the advanced controls really are the future of the control systems. Again, they can integrate into your HVAC system. They can integrate in with your plug loads. So as soon as the light sense that people are gone, if you have your computer system, at everybody's desk plugged into a wall outlet that is related back to these, it will shut down the computers. All the data will be tracked and monitored. We know these can be attached to asset tracking systems. So for example, there was an airport that had all the little RFD readers on the wheelchairs, and they were tracked through the lighting system. They saved over $2 million a year by not having to send people to run around and find where the wheelchairs are. Now they could just pull it up on their dashboard and say, oh, there's a wheelchair here, there's a wheelchair there, and they could keep them wrangled in a little bit better so they were where they were supposed to be. It is easier if you're doing a big lighting upgrade to install these now, or at least plan for them now. And then, instead of coming back and doing this later. And these projects are always processed right now as a customized incentive here at EVT, just because of the fact that they are so much more complicated and need more information involved with them. You're basically designing two systems, a lighting controls or a lighting system and a control savings. So with integrating into your HVAC or other systems, again, your HVAC can ramp up or ramp down based on the occupancy level. You can get a lot more granular than a standard on-off system with the HVAC. You'll be able to monitor the maintenance a little bit better. There's definitely the ways to save more energy when you're integrating in with other systems. So you're gonna, what you're gonna see overall for savings outside of lighting is gonna depend on how much you do, but 10 to 15% savings is not uncommon on these systems. So the control opportunities. Some of the things you want to look at, do they have high operating hours? Do they have areas where the lights are on all the time, but there's a lot of places where nobody's actually there? Are they, in office areas, are they, or even warehouses or manufacturing, do they change the space use often and need to adjust the light levels? Are their existing light levels even meeting recommendation levels? Are they thinking long-term with integrating into another building management system or a centralized control package? Do the lighting controls make sense versus a simple on-off sensor? And the big thing is, what is their timeline in their budget? If they need something quick and fast, a comprehensive control system may not be the best bet now, but an integrated control system that they can upgrade to the next step later may be a good idea. So some of the areas that we see are definitely warehouses where fixture mounted sensors can turn on and off as they need. You can have the light output set to lower light levels so the aisles are never actually dark. You can see up to 70% savings in these spaces. With offices or commercial rental spaces, again, you can go in and change these. If you get tenants that switch out every 2 to 3 years, you can very easily go back in and switch around what the light levels are or different traffic patterns. And of course, anything with a really high run hours, but unoccupied spaces definitely make sense to put some type of control in. If it's a space that has large windows with lots of daylight coming in, controls are fantastic. Why have the lights on when you have great sunlight coming in? Some of the stuff you're going to want to talk about with the building owner is, what do they plan to do with the space? Do they want to track the space usage and see what the traffic patterns are? These systems often can do this. Do they want to integrate the lighting system into other buildings either now or down the road? Do they want staff to have control of, quote unquote, their light right above them? Or if they're all in individual offices, have them in their offices or their workspaces? Do you need scene controls in different areas, such as like a classroom where you're going to have AV issues? So you can have preset settings all there. So the teacher just knows to hit 1, 2, 3, 4 buttons and they can get testing mode, they can get a reading mode, they can get an AV mode. Are there areas they're looking to fix? What do they care about? What is the reason that they want to do these? Why do they want controls? And then, of course, who will be doing the installation and the commissioning? Will there be, when you're talking with these people, is there additional fees for this work? Will the IT department, or should be the IT department, be involved for networking with these? That's a big one to talk about. And of course, 2020 building code, as we all know, is pushing more and more. LEDs are basically baseline at this point for new construction. And everything is going to come with controls. Everything needs controls now. So your savings is going to come from having more controllability of these lights. So EVT does have a couple of different programs. We obviously have our standalone programs with, the open ceiling, remote mounted sensors, wall mounted sensors. You can purchase those, submit online, or print out the rebate form and mail it in. You got to supply the invoices. The integrated and occupancy and daylight sensors can either be installed on site or at the factory. And if it's under 250 products, 250 light fixtures on the total order, those are eligible for the Smart Light point of purchase discount through our participating dealers. If you're using somebody who's not a dealer, we can work with you. But the network lighting controls for the more comprehensive system, where you really want to do the high-end trim and get really aggressive with these are going to be custom projects. And you'll probably be working with Adam or I on these. We definitely want to talk with you before you start installing these and purchasing them. So we want to make sure that everything is going to work together. The fixtures definitely make sense and are DLC approved. And as in other custom projects, the incentive does come at the end. So some of the information that we're going to need when we're talking with you on these projects. Obviously, the first one, are you looking for a simple lighting control system with some basic zoning, occupancy, daylighting, or are you looking at the more in-depth? Are they integrated sensors, standalone sensors? If they're standalone, how many sensors are going to be installed in each section? How many lights are on those? What are the hours? And we will need some estimates of what the occupancy rate is in each space. What, if you're going to have them just dimmed down, what the unoccupied lumen output setting is. Are you knocking it back 50%, 20, down to 20% light output, 10% light output? And are they going to have any high-end trim set points? So the high-end trim is where you're sitting at your desk and someone, doesn't want the light at full output. It's too glary. So they bring it down to 80%. Someone else may have it brought down to 50% light output. You can set these all up differently for anybody, but we would need to know in the beginning kind of a rough estimate. Usually people kind of come in and say, I'm going to set everything automatically at 80%. And then we can go back after it's all installed and fine tune. So as we're doing that, you're going to want to write up a sequence of operation. So if there's any preset levels, any defined scenes for audio visual presentations and conference rooms and classrooms, what the daylighting looks like, which fixtures will get daylighting, which ones will only have occupancy, and what's the timeout? Is it 30 seconds? Is it 2 minutes? Is it a half an hour? Are they going to be auto on or manual on? Any override capabilities? Let's sit and talk and let's figure these out and write it all out ahead of time. So when they are getting installed, we have everything figured out. So you're going to want to consider the occupants that are in the space type, private offices versus open offices, classrooms, hallways. Everything is going to probably be different. They never should be all designed to be exactly the same. You may have fairly close as you're installing the first time through and then tweaking after, but typically you're going to see some changes throughout the spaces. And this should always be included with the construction documents. And you can write it up as either a matrix or a space by space type. And I got a couple of examples on this next slide. So here's an example of just a handwritten out space by space. This is the hallway, how it's going to run during normal hours. It's on 100% when occupied. After 10 minutes, it'll drop to 20% light output. So it's never dark going down those halls. During after hours, it's going to stay at 10% when unoccupied. But if someone comes in, it's only going to go up to 50%, and it'll be on a 5-minute delay. And obviously, the emergency lights, when there's an emergency event, will go all the way up to 100%. And then the same information written out on a controls on a matrix. So when you're going through installation, your initial startup and programming, we often have 3 steps that we go through. We encourage having a startup and programming meeting, talking with the contractor and the manufacturer, how are these going to be installed? And then after everything's installed, you want to get acceptance testing to make sure everything's working well, the client's happy. Maybe a commissioning agent walking through at the same time after this has been done, and getting the commissioning agent to do an actual install on these, and that everything is done as we said. So for every project, we have 4 steps that we suggest that you do if you're going to do these more comprehensive programs. Look at a pre-wiring meeting. So you want to have your manufacturer reps there, your contractors there, everybody, to make sure that you've got things all detailed out. You want to make sure you have all your devices installed, all the drawings done up correctly. If you need new drawings, make sure that's part of your RFP. You want to make sure everything is installed by a qualified factory person or a technician that really understands the system. Nothing's worse than having these be installed by someone that's never really done them before and is just kind of grabbing them and going. You want to make sure you get your full documentation of how these were programmed and provide that to the owner. And then we often suggest having follow-up. We all know how this goes, that after 60, 90 days, you haven't really played with it too much, you're forgetting little things. So having this follow-up training, whether it's by a Zoom call or an in-person, whatever works best, it's just good to be able to kind of go over, get that refresher, make sure the customer is happy, make sure they don't have any questions. If they have been using it, make sure they're still using it correctly and that they haven't run into any other issues. So now on to our case study. So we worked with Gifford Medical Center a few years ago to upgrade their lighting. We had been talking with them for quite a while, trying to upgrade their T8s to LEDs. We looked at a couple of different ways of doing this. And while we were discussing all of this, the network lighting controls were starting to come out more and more popular. So some basic LED, T8 to LED reviews were looked at with basic controls, and they were okay projects. But when we mixed in LEDs and more lighting controls, everybody got a little bit more excited. And they really got excited when we started talking about being able to tie these in with the HVAC systems and other systems in general. Patrick was heavily involved right from the get-go on this project. And we had a big pre-meeting that we got everybody in the room. So we had EVT, we had staff from Gifford, we had the IT department from Gifford. I highly recommend bringing these folks in because they are going to question everything about having a new server and new software system being installed on their servers. We had the lighting rep, we had the HVAC rep, we had the lighting designer, and we had the contractors that would be helping do the work all involved with us. And we just sat down for a few hours talked about the systems, talked about what works, what doesn't work. IT got all of their questions and answers done of, how does this tie into the system? Because obviously security is a huge, huge factor with them. So they felt very comfortable, and we were able to move forward. And, they're saving just from the controls. They're seeing over $8,000 a year on savings. So we're getting huge savings out of this project. They redid the entire building with LEDs. It's all on a network lighting control system. And now we're working with them on, as if we got to the next slide, we're upgrading now to the HVAC system in the administrative wing. We're going to get that all installed, make sure it's running the way they want, and ideally scale out to the rest of the building. And one thing with the system is if Patrick decides, to install these in the outside offices off campus and over the internet, they'll be able to tie it right back in, and he'll still be able to sit in his office here at the main campus in Randolph and be able to assist people over with their lights over in Chelsea or Bethel at some of their other locations. So I'll let Patrick talk some more about how we did the program and what's going on at Gifford.
Thanks, Jill. Appreciate it. It has been a great project for us. Can't say enough of how easy this was to implement. I have to preface that by being in operations. We were like, yeah, we're going to replace these LEDs, old lights with LEDs in one of our buildings. And we're going to do it. We're going to get that savings. And then, of course, we engaged with Efficiency Vermont and got a much broader snapshot of the system, what it can do, what those possibilities are. And as we looked at our facility, we're like, all right, we haven't changed these fixtures out in a long time. So looking down the road, we weren't going to change these out again, hopefully in a very long time. We started looking at what are those savings? How can we leverage those down the road? And really took advantage of those savings from the controls and from top down from our senior leadership through those pre-meetings and presentations. They had buy-in, they saw the savings, the long-term goal here, and it worked incredibly well. Our advantages for us, really customizable. You hit a lot of those points earlier. We can take a hallway in the off hours, take those lights, they're all linked together, say there's 25 lights in an area, they're gonna dim to 20% and they're gonna stay there. They will not shut off in a corridor. Again, we're in a hospital. That corridor could be in use at any time. As soon as any of those lights pick up on anything, motion-wise, the lights immediately pick up to the settings where we wanted them. So that's been really great for us, as well as lack of maintenance. We have, there's no replacing ballast. The lights don't burn out in an incredibly long time. The lenses are sealed. We're not cleaning bugs out of the lenses. So the ease of product has been really great to use, really has, certainly. The pre-meetings, can't say enough about that, which you hit on. Getting everyone in the room, getting a concise plan together with our team, and then internally going out to those office spaces, the managers, letting them know that, hey, contractors are coming in and this is why. And then really getting ahead of it with being able to set up those lights specifically to their needs. Being in healthcare, again, there's a certain light standard you have to have in certain areas, and that's where we put them. But in other office spaces, we can control lights and really bring them back down and leverage the controls for more savings in the future. And that's one of those things that we have done consistently. My master electrician has gone back and kind of dialed in areas and trimmed them out even more. We're using more of that daylight sensing to take areas and use the natural light to then lower the output of the light. So that part of it also continuing to leverage those controls to help us out, which is great. The BACnet system, if you will, being able to look at what are those savings? How can we actually document those savings, present them to senior leadership, to our energy committee, and let them know how the system's working, has been a real bonus and something to self-promote as well internally to use the system. Even now, we really are using it where we've got large cubicles areas. We've got folks working from home that never did before in the last year and a half. So we would then go and take that entire space, manage those lights and make them smaller, smaller areas, if you will, so they're not all tied together. And I can take a light over a cubicle that no one's occupying and lower that light because it's not being occupied at that time, while the other 20 plus lights in the area are still doing their job and performing like they should. So the controllability has been wonderful to be able to use it for those uses. As Jill, you highlighted also, now we're looking at HVAC controls. So we've got our light system in, we've got the controls dialed in, kind of that low-hanging fruit, if you will, we're using, but then the HVAC system, trying to look at that where if we have a boardroom that's not being used, we can go to unoccupied mode in that space. So we can set back the HVAC controls. And then as soon as, again, that motion sensor picks up anyone entering the room, the HVAC system will bring itself back up pretty quickly to its standard and level the room out. We can program those things, and we can also use them for being able to, again, in a motion sense, to be able to do that. So it's exciting for us to take that next step for planning that, to be able to highlight and use those systems again. That initial investment up front we made, but now continuing down that path. It's been rewarding to be able to do that and keep tweaking those things and doing that. Highly recommend the system and doing it up front so that you have this system in place. Again, you can continue to leverage those savings moving forward. For us, that was been one of the best things that we've done here in a long time. Lighting quality, again, is fantastic. We found that with the LEDs, when we put them in, the light was very bright. It was a lot of light. So we were dialing lights back, the percentage of output, pretty consistently in a lot of our spaces. So we, I think our kitchen area is full on. The lab, of course, is full on. A number of other places, but a lot of them, we were able to immediately bring the lighting back down quite a low percent and still have very warm and quality lighting in spaces. So yeah, again, I highly recommend this to anybody who can go through this process and commit to it. It's been great for us. The controls, certainly being able to do that. You can also add, Jill, you mentioned this earlier, controls in specific rooms. So some we do not have controls in rooms or in areas. Those lights are dictated by us kind of behind the scenes. But in someone's individual room, you can go in and it's a wireless light controller, if you will, switch that you can have a setting on that for how high those lights go in that space. Then people can trim them down themselves. So giving that accessibility to individuals as well has proven very successful for us with a lot of individuals to be able to control that. That also gives them, us greater savings because people are usually dialing that light back down even further than maybe we would have set it. So it's been a great project for us. That partnership with Efficiency Vermont, can't say enough about it, kind of stewarding us through that process and making sure that we were successful and being able to do it to a high level.
Patrick, well, we did have one question come in that wanted to see if you'd be willing to share some information on it. The question that came in is, what is the controls platform being used at Gifford? So I'm not sure if you'd be willing to share the system that you have in place, and then there's a couple follow-up ones, but I'll stop there so you can answer that one first.
Yep. So SensorView is the name of the program that we use. The lighting design firm has used this in the past. They were pretty well tested. It allows us to, from our laptop, if you will, right from here, I control the lighting from my office. You can also have that app, if you will, on your phone. I can go into a space and have a conversation with somebody and set the lighting to where they'd like it. So it's nice to be able to do that. And that's how we control the lights when we rolled this out. So we weren't just turning the lights on and then having people show up on the next day and have them kind of come in and be like, oh my goodness, this is. So we would go in and talk to folks with that sensor view system and set the lighting right there with them, kind of real time, and then go, we'll be back and chat with you. Let's get used to it for a while. And it worked incredibly well.
Great, thank you for that. And as a follow-up, are the light levels based on using that system, are they based on a percentage or on a lumen rating?
So a lumen rating, well, you can use it as a lumen rating because in certain areas we have to maintain a certain lumen level, but it is a lumen level. And also, so we bought a meter so that we could go into a space and specifically know what the lumen levels were on that. And you can also set them by a percentage as well. So I mentioned we dial lights back in some of our corridors in the off hours to a 20%. So it's a percentage based on that, but then we also use a lumen meter to verify where they were at.
Excellent, thank you, I appreciate it.
And I'll add a personal from myself, having gone down to Gifford Medical Center, unfortunately on personal stuff, and they've got one hallway that has at one end a lot of large floor to ceiling windows, and the other end of the hallway has absolutely no windows. And being a lighting person, obviously we kind of notice little different stuff that the normal person would never notice. But looking down, I never noticed a bright difference at one end versus the other because of these daylight sensors. They're all able to pick up no matter where the light's hitting in that space. It looks exactly the same from one end to the other. So it's not like I'm coming from a dark end of the hall into an overly bright spot of the hall. It's just a nice level light the whole way through.
Yeah, we've tried to leverage that wherever we can, folks in their offices and definitely in some of those corridors specifically. But one thing we noticed also were the finishes in the room actually played off the lighting that was coming in, the natural lighting. So we were making adjustments because your eye is saying one thing, the light is saying another, and trying to dial that in. But yeah, folks have loved that. And we've promoted it with posters throughout the facility that we have with LED and daylight harvesting. So people stop and read the poster, and then you see them start looking around and start taking it in and go, oh, yeah, you really can't tell, but we are harvesting daylight in certain areas.
That's great, thank you. And there were a few other questions that came in that hopefully I answered in full for folks. There was one pertaining to the difference between standard aux sensors and dual sensors, and when it's appropriate to use one versus the other. And for folks who weren't paying attention to the Q&A, the dual sensors can perform daylight sensing as well as occupancy sensing. So an appropriate use of a dual sensor would be essentially what was just mentioned a moment ago. If your light fixtures are in an area where it has access to a lot of daylight, then you want to consider sensors that have that functionality that can perform aux sensing and daylight sensing. If they are not, then an occupancy sensor would likely be more appropriate for you. And the first question that came in the chat pertained to essentially situations where one might be working at their desk or in another space where the occupancy sensors turn off the fixture when you're still in the space, and how to avoid that. And there are instances that I've spoken about with customers, and I've also experienced myself, where there are a couple different solutions in order to resolve the matter. One has to do with the location of the occupancy sensor. So, for example, you know, if the occupancy sensor is located in a restroom space and it doesn't detect somebody in the space because you're in the stall, then that can present an issue. So the sensor might need to be relocated, or another workaround for that would be the time out of the sensor itself. So some sensors might have a 5, 10, 20 minute timeout. If it's currently set to a 5 or 10 minute timeout, that might need to be extended to 20 minutes based on the end use application. So those are some things, some potential solutions in situations where you're in a space that are and the fixtures go off when you're in the space. And I didn't see any more questions come in through the chat. So if anybody wants to chime in with more questions through the chat, or you know, ask the question, feel free to jump on in. And if not, we can certainly let you have 12 minutes back of your afternoon. Certainly, this last slide just shows how you can contact us. And again, just wanted to thank you for being here and for your time. Really glad that you were all here. Great attendance today and had some great questions coming in. And I'll turn it back over to John so he can give some closing remarks.
Yep.
Awesome.
And just a quick note from me, if anybody ever has questions, feel free to reach out to Adam or myself here at Efficiency Vermont. You can always call a toll-free number and ask to speak to one of us. If you can't remember our names, that's okay. Just tell them you want to talk to the lighting people for commercial, and they'll pop it over to one of the two of us, more than likely. But our contact info is on the slide, so feel free to reach out.
Yep, and certainly forgot. Thank you very much, Patrick, for coming on and sharing with us. That was great content, great information, and yeah, very much appreciated. So thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so to close up shop, yeah, thanks to all three of you. Great content, and just a quick promo that this is the first of 3. So next session will be a week from today. So next Tuesday, again at noon, and the topic will be variable frequency drives, presented by Chuck Clarici of Efficiency Vermont. So we hope that you'll all join us next week for another great session. And on that note, have a wonderful Tuesday. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.